The silence after she closed the door was heavier than any goodbye. No slammed door. No dramatic footsteps. Just the quiet snick of the lock sliding shut, like she'd done it 100 times before. And maybe she had, just never out loud. On the table, a half-drunk cup of green tea, her favorite scarf folded with robotic precision, in an empty photo frame. She didn't take the picture. Just the frame. That bothered me more than I expected. The dog didn't even bark. He just looked at me, blinked once, and curled back up on her side of the couch. I should have stopped her. I should have said something. Something more than, okay. That's all I managed, one stupid syllable. I watched her walk to the car from the upstairs window. Red taillights, black suitcase, gray hoodie. She didn't look back. The clouds looked like they wanted to rain, but weren't sure it was worth the effort. 2 days before, she'd told me she booked a week-long retreat. Someplace with no cell signal, no mirrors, and no men over 30. A place to breathe, she called it. That phrase stuck with me like food caught in your teeth, too small to notice until it starts to hurt. I didn't ask questions. That was my specialty. I didn't ask where. I didn't ask with whom. I didn't ask if she'd be back. I think part of me didn't want the answers. Her toothbrush was gone. Her charger too. But not her wedding ring. That was still in the kitchen drawer, next to the scissors. I found it an hour later, while looking for a battery. I held that ring for a long time. It wasn't shiny anymore. Worn, a little dented. Like me. Like us. There's something eerie about eating dinner alone when you're still setting the table for two out of habit. I made too much pasta. The chair across from me stayed empty. Halfway through, I found myself explaining a dumb story from work, to no one. Then I laughed. Loudly. Too loudly. That laugh turned into something else by the time I stood up. I didn't cry that night. I just stayed up, scrubbing the stove. Every burner. Every corner. I needed to erase her fingerprints from something. Needed to feel like I had control over at least one surface in this house. That night, I slept on the floor. The bed felt like too much space. I kept checking my phone, even though she said not to expect messages. She needed time and space. I guess she meant freedom. I told myself, maybe this is what love looks like now, letting her go so she can find herself. But 2 weeks later, I saw her tagged in a photo at a beach bar. She was laughing. Not the kind of laugh we had during road trips or movie nights. This was different. She looked 10 years younger. And beside her, some guy in cargo shorts with 2 beers and one hand around her waist like it had always been there. She didn't go to a retreat. She went to start over. Without me. The thing about betrayal is that it never shows up at your door wearing a name tag. It arrives quietly, comfortably, like a friend, until it starts moving furniture inside your chest without asking. That photo? It didn't even go viral. Just a grainy Instagram story from one of her college friends who didn't bother hiding her phone screen. A sunset in Key West, clinking glasses, and there she was. My wife. Hair blowing in the wind. A new dress. A new smile. A man I'd never seen before leaning in like he belonged there. I watched that story again and again until it disappeared after 24 hours. Each time I hit replay, I noticed new details, her hand on his knee, the way his thumb traced her shoulder, the way she leaned into him without hesitation. It wasn't just a fling. That was affection, comfort. That was intimacy built on more than just a weekend. And the worst part? She hadn't even blocked me. It wasn't some secret affair tucked behind burner phones or fake profiles. She just didn't care if I saw it. She was that confident I'd stay silent. That I'd keep playing the fool in her story, the boring husband with a quiet house and a loyal dog. I didn't message her. I didn't comment. I didn't confront her. I just sat there on the kitchen floor, back against the cabinet, holding the cold coffee I'd brewed an hour earlier. I felt like a ghost in my own life. I checked our shared calendar. She'd marked the entire week as wellness getaway. That word again. Wellness. As if cheating was now self-care. I spent the next day rearranging the garage. Not because I needed to. Just because the silence inside the house was unbearable. Every room smelled like her shampoo, citrus body spray, something floral and warm. I opened all the windows, hoping the wind would carry her scent out and bring something else in. Anything else. But all I got was more stillness. At night, I tried to sleep. But every creak of the hallway made me imagine her heels clicking home. Every passing car made me look out the window like some abandoned Labrador. Milo had stopped waiting by the door. Dogs are smarter than people that way. By the 3rd day, I gave in and called her. Straight to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. What would I even say? Hey honey, hope the cocktails were nice. Can you tell your new boyfriend to give you a break so we can talk about our mortgage? Instead, I made a folder on my computer. I called it Proof. I started saving screenshots, texts, receipts, posts. I had no plan, no master revenge scheme or legal plot. I just needed something real to look at, something that told me I wasn't imagining it, that I wasn't crazy, that I was a man being replaced. The next time I saw her name pop up, it wasn't a call. It was an email. A cold, 3-paragraph memo titled, "Let's keep this civil." She wrote, "I hope you understand this is best for both of us. I need to pursue my happiness, and you deserve someone who aligns with your version of stability." Stability? That was her word for me. I was a house foundation, a seatbelt, a damn smoke alarm. Safe, necessary, but not exciting. She ended with, "Please don't make this messy. I've already contacted a mediator." That was it. No explanation, no apology, no acknowledgement of what she'd done or who she'd done it with. And still. I replied, "Okay." That word again. But this time, I didn't delete the email. I printed it out, folded it, tucked it behind her old journal. I don't know why. Maybe part of me thought she'd come back someday, and I'd be ready to remind her. But what I didn't expect, what I couldn't imagine, was that the moment I finally let go, truly let go, the story would flip, and she would come running back. Because her new life? It wasn't what she thought it would be. The funny thing about silence is how loud it becomes when you're used to chaos. Our house had gone from constant friction, arguments over nothing, slammed cabinets, awkward silences at dinner, to actual quiet. Too quiet. I thought I'd missed the arguments. Turns out I missed the sound of her keys in the bowl, the way she'd mumble song to herself while getting ready, the smell of burnt toast she never learned to make right. But I didn't reach out again. I'd done enough reaching. Instead, I started taking walks. Long ones. Just to be away from the house. I'd loop through the same park we used to walk together on Sundays, past the duck pond where we once argued about baby names back when we thought we might still have a shot at being parents. We were going to name our daughter Ivy. I still remember that, though I doubt she does. Then, one afternoon, almost 2 weeks after her last email, I got a message from an unknown number. Just one sentence. "She's not who you think she is." I stared at it for a full minute. My first thought was spam. My second thought was paranoia. But my third? That came with a wave of cold reality. Because deep down, I already knew that message was telling the truth. I didn't respond. 2 hours later, a second message came through. This time with a photo. It was her, Mallory, at that same beach bar. Same dress. Same guy. But this photo was different. The man wasn't smiling. He looked tense. She looked drunk. Off balance. Her head leaned against his shoulder, but he was staring away from her, arm stiff, his other hand gripping his phone like he wanted to be somewhere else. The caption underneath, sent by the unknown number, simply read, "She's doing this to him now too." I felt something stir inside me. Not jealousy, not rage. Something more pathetic, something like, "So she's just broken in general." It wasn't just me. The third message was a video. I hesitated, then pressed play. It was taken from across a parking lot, grainy and shaky, but I could make out enough. Mallory and the guy from the beach, yelling. Her voice was shrill. His was barely audible. She grabbed at his shirt. He pushed her away gently but firmly. Then she dropped to the curb and buried her face in her hands. The person filming whispered, "Same story, new victim," before the video ended. I felt sick. Not because she was unraveling, but because I still felt like it was somehow my fault. Like I hadn't loved her the right way. Like I'd been too passive, too dull, too predictable. I was the wallpaper, she said. And now here she was, peeling off in someone else's apartment, someone else's car, someone else's life. I called the number. A woman answered. She didn't give her name, just said she was a friend of the other guy. His name was Aaron. Recently divorced. Met Mallory during a conference. Fell hard. Fast. She told him she was already separated, that I was cold, inattentive, barely present. Classic playbook. Then she moved into his place after 2 weeks. 2 weeks. And guess what? She'd started doing to him exactly what she'd done to me. Lying about her whereabouts. Going silent for days. Claiming he was suffocating her when he asked where she'd been. And now, just like clockwork, she was packing bags and talking about needing time to heal. I thanked the woman. She asked if I wanted to talk to Aaron. I said no. What was I going to say? Welcome to the club. Here's a brochure and a Spotify playlist for sleepless nights. But here's the part one didn't expect. That same night, around 2:17 a.m., my phone rang. It was her, Mallory. No warning, no text, no missed call build up. Just her name lighting up my screen like a ghost had remembered the living. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't want to, but because I was afraid of what I'd hear if I did. She called again. Then again. 4 times in 1 hour. Then, silence. I didn't sleep. By morning, I had 3 new voicemails. And the last one would change everything. Because in it, she said something I never thought I'd hear from her again. I sat there for a long time before pressing play, just staring at my phone on the counter like it might bite me. It was weird. I wasn't even angry anymore. I think I'd moved past anger into something colder, something duller. The kind of numb that makes you question if any of it ever mattered. But I listened. The first voicemail was just her breathing for 5 seconds before she hung up. The second. Hey, Trent. I didn't think you'd answer. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from. That's fair. But something happened, and I don't know who else to call. Click. No goodbye. No explanation. The third voicemail, though, that one was different. Trent, I'm sorry. I know I don't get to ask anything of you. I know that. But I made a mistake. I thought I wanted a different life, but I don't think I even knew what that meant. I've been lying, not just to you, to everyone, even myself. I thought freedom would feel like flying, but it just feels like falling with no one to catch me. Please call me back. That voice, the desperation in it, it sounded like a version of her I'd never heard. Or maybe a version I hadn't heard in years. I stared out the window as the message ended, the sun coming up in soft stripes through the blinds. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel numb. I felt something else, conflicted. Because I wanted her to suffer a little. I'll admit that. I wanted her to know what it felt like to sit in the dark with unanswered questions and a hollow stomach. But hearing her like that, scared, unsure, it cut through every wall I built since she walked out. Still, I didn't call her. Not immediately. Instead, I went for a drive. Just the open road, no destination. Somewhere quiet where I could think. I ended up at the edge of a reservoir we used to visit in the fall. The trees were bare now, branches like bones reaching toward a gray sky. I sat on a cold bench for nearly an hour, trying to replay the last 6 months of my life in my head like a movie reel, where things had shifted, what I missed, what I pretended not to see. My phone buzzed again. A text. From her. One line. He kicked me out. That was it. No name. No apology. No please. Just a passive announcement, like it was my responsibility to care. And the sad part? I did. I texted back. Are you safe? She replied instantly. Not really. Before I could think it through, I was already in the car, engine running, heading back toward the city. I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe I thought I'd find her on a street corner with her suitcase like something out of a movie. But when I pulled up to her location, I saw her sitting on the curb outside a 24-hour laundromat, shivering, arms around her knees, hair a tangled mess. Not the woman from the beach. Not the version of her with confidence and eyeliner and bare shoulders. This was Mallory without the costume. She looked up at me like a child in trouble, and for a moment, everything paused. I parked. I didn't say anything. Just opened the passenger door. She climbed in. We didn't speak for the first 10 minutes of the drive. I could hear her teeth chattering, but she didn't reach for the heat. She just stared ahead, face pale, eyes red. I didn't ask questions. I didn't want to know yet. I needed to wait until I could hear it without exploding. Finally, I said, "Why now?" She didn't answer. I turned to look at her. "Why did you call me? After all this time, why now?" And what she said next, it didn't just shake me. It rewrote everything I thought I knew. She whispered, "Because I think I'm pregnant. And I don't know who the father is." I nearly veered off the road. Pregnant? The word hit me like ice water down the back of my neck. My fingers clenched around the steering wheel, and I stared straight ahead as if the lines on the road would somehow guide me towards sanity. She didn't cry when she said it. Her voice wasn't trembling. It wasn't even apologetic. It was flat, factual, like she'd said she left her phone charger in a hotel room. I pulled into the first empty parking lot I could find, some closed-down gas station with a cracked sign and weeds poking through the concrete. I killed the engine and sat there in silence, watching steam curl from the hood in the cold night air. "When did you find out?" I asked, keeping my tone level, though I could feel my pulse pounding in my neck. She hesitated. "Yesterday. I took a test at Aaron's place." "So, is it his?" She shrugged, actually shrugged. "I don't know." Her words were knives wrapped in velvet. They didn't yell, they didn't cut loud, that just sank deeper the longer I sat with them. And you're telling me why? I asked. You think I should do something? Offer support? What? She turned to look at me for the first time since getting in the car. Her eyes were swollen, her face pale and cracked with fatigue. I don't know what I want from you. I just knew. I couldn't go to him. Not after what happened. What did happen? She looked away again, jaw tight. He lost it. Not physically. But he accused me of using him, said I manipulated everything. He found my old texts to you, the ones where I pretended I was miserable while I was already seeing him. I let that settle. So you lied to both of us. I was confused, she whispered. No, Mallory, I said quietly. You were reckless. You took a wrecking ball to everything. And now you're sitting in the rubble asking me if I'll help you sweep. She opened her mouth but said nothing. I didn't pity her. Not anymore. What I felt was harder to name, something between disbelief and something crueler. I wanted to hurt her with the truth, the way she'd hurt me with her silence and disappearances and freedom. She rubbed her forehead. I didn't think it would be like this. I thought I needed to find myself. You didn't find yourself, I snapped. You just lost everyone who was willing to love you without conditions. The silence after that was thick, suffocating. She leaned her head against the window. I don't know what to do. If it's yours. I shook my head, scoffing. If it's mine? You weren't even living in the same house as me when it happened. When exactly do you think this miracle conception happened, Mallory? She didn't answer. It hit me then, she didn't believe it was mine. Not really. But part of her, some twisted part, wanted to stitch herself back into my life using this as the thread. Not love. Not regret. Just a biological maybe. And that scared me. Because despite everything, there was a part of me, deep in my gut, that still wanted to be wanted. That still missed the way she used to touch my arm in the grocery store or the way she'd fall asleep in the car with her hand on my leg. I hated that part of me. I hated how it still flickered when she looked at me like this. She finally said, I have nowhere to go. And the truth was she didn't. Her parents had moved to Florida. Her sister wouldn't speak to her after she'd crashed on her couch and left without a word. Aaron clearly wanted nothing to do with her now. She had burned every bridge she ever walked on. Except mine. And the twisted, pathetic part? Mine was still standing. Worn and cracked, but standing. I sighed and turned the engine back on. You can sleep on the couch. That's it. She nodded without a word. We drove back to my place. No, my place now in silence. She curled up with a blanket and Milo watched her warily from the hallway, like he knew better than I did. I lay in bed that night wide awake, listening to the creak of the old floorboards as she shifted in the dark. And I realized something that chilled me to the bone. This wasn't just about a broken marriage anymore. Something bigger was unraveling. And I had no idea how deep it would go. The next morning, she was already awake before I even walked out of the bedroom. She sat at the kitchen table like she belonged there, like it hadn't been months since she made coffee in that house or left with that smug look that haunted me every time I closed my eyes. She didn't say good morning, just offered a small nod and slid a mug of coffee toward me. I didn't touch it. You can stop playing house, I muttered. This isn't some soft reboot. I know, she said. Her voice was hoarse like she hadn't slept either. I'm just trying not to fall apart. I looked at her carefully. Her makeup was gone. She wore one of her old hoodies she must have dug out of the storage bin in the hall closet. Her hair was tied up carelessly, and she kept fidgeting with the spoon in her cup like it might stir her thoughts into order. We didn't talk about the pregnancy. Not yet. Instead, she asked if she could stay a few days, just until I find a place. I told her the couch was temporary, and I meant it. I wasn't going to fall for her sadness just because she showed up barefoot and broken. But life has a strange way of piling things on when you're already buckling. Around noon, I got a phone call. It was the lawyer I'd hired a few weeks back, before everything spiraled. He told me there had been some paperwork delays, but the divorce was now legally finalized. It's done, he said. You're no longer married. The words echoed longer than I expected. Later that afternoon, I told her. I kept it blunt. It's official. We're not married anymore. She blinked. Just once. But her hands curled into fists in her lap. That was fast. No, I replied. It was slow. You just didn't notice. She didn't respond. Instead, she walked to the sink and stared out the window for nearly 5 minutes. Not a word. Not a twitch. Just silence. That night, after she fell asleep on the couch, I sat in the garage with a box of old photos. I hadn't touched them since she left. I don't even know what I was looking for. Some proof that we were happy once? Some hint that the collapse had a beginning? There was one picture that made me pause. Us at a cabin 2 winters ago. She was curled into me, red cheeks from the cold, smile wide and real. I remember that day, we'd gotten lost on a trail and ended up arguing about a map. But then we laughed for 20 minutes straight because she was sure the squirrel we saw was following us. I stared at that photo until my eyes stung. Why wasn't that enough for her? The next morning, I found something on the kitchen table. A manila envelope. No name on the front. Just left there, neatly placed next to the salt shaker. I opened it. Inside were 3 items: a sonogram photo, a printed paternity test appointment, and a handwritten note. I'll never forget what it said. I didn't come back to ask for help. I came back because I can't hide from who I've become. I don't know who the father is, and I won't pretend I deserve anything from you. But if it's yours, I want you to know I'll take responsibility, whatever that means. I'll go if you want me to. But before I do, there's one thing you deserve to hear. Something I never told you, because I was too much of a coward. She didn't finish the note. It just stopped, mid-sentence, as if she ran out of nerve. I stood there in the kitchen, the paper trembling in my hands, the sonogram burning a hole in my gut. This woman, who had torched everything we built, who slept in another man's arms while I fixed the plumbing, was now nesting again in my house, on my couch, inside my life. And now, there was something else. Something still unspoken. A truth I hadn't heard yet. One she apparently wasn't ready to face. But I was. So that night, I knocked on the doorframe of the living room and asked quietly, "What didn't you write?" She looked up at me slowly, eyes wide and red. And then she said something that made me forget every hurt, every insult, every piece of evidence I'd collected in that stupid folder on my computer. She said, "It wasn't the first time. It wasn't the first time," she said softly, barely above a whisper, like she was afraid the walls might lean in closer to hear it. I didn't react. Not right away. Something inside me froze so completely that I thought maybe I'd misheard her. I was standing there, just outside the frame of the living room where she lay curled up in a borrowed blanket on the couch, a blanket we used to share on Sunday mornings. I stared at her like she was a puzzle I'd tried to finish for years, only to realize I'd been missing half the pieces the whole time. She sat up slowly, knees pulled into her chest, arms wrapped around herself as if she could physically hold back the weight of her own words. She didn't look at me when she said it again. It wasn't just Aaron. There were others. There was no breath left in my lungs. No sound in my ears. Just that sentence ringing again and again, like a dropped wine glass that wouldn't stop shattering in my head. I leaned against the wall. "How many?" She didn't answer. "How many, Mallory?" My voice cracked in the middle, like something raw was breaking free after being buried for years. She buried her face in her hands and shook her head, sobbing into her palms. "I don't even know anymore." I laughed. It wasn't a sane laugh. It was dry, bitter, helpless. The sound of someone finally realizing they were the only one playing by the rules in a game they didn't even sign up for. "You don't know," I repeated, pacing now. "You really can't count them? Were they all strangers? Old flames?" "What? You had a rotation while I was making you dinner." She didn't answer. That silence said more than words ever could. And in that moment, something ugly woke up inside me. Not rage, that had come and gone. This was something colder, more dangerous. I need to understand how far I'd been erased from her world while still living under the illusion that I was the center of it. Was it while we were trying for kids? I asked. She winced. "Trent." "No. Answer me," I said. "Did you sleep with someone while I was driving you to fertility appointments? While I was holding your hand and telling you we'd try again next month?" She nodded once. And that was it. My knees gave out, and I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the cold hardwood floor. My hands were trembling. My teeth clenched so hard my jaw ached. She came toward me like she might try to offer comfort, but I raised a hand. "Don't," I said. "Don't come near me right now." She stood there frozen, a shell of a person. And maybe that was all she'd ever been. A shell I'd poured love into, never noticing it had a hole at the bottom. The silence stretched for a long time. When I finally spoke, it was quiet. "Why?" She sat back down slowly, hugging herself. "Because I hated who I was with you. Not because of you. Because of me. You loved me too well. You were too safe, too patient. You forgave everything too easily. I didn't know how to exist in that. You cheated because I wasn't cruel enough?" I asked. "No," she said quickly. "I cheated because I was empty, and I thought being touched by someone, anyone, might fill me." I closed my eyes. I didn't know what was worse, the betrayal, or the fact that deep down, I recognized the sadness in what she'd just said. We sat like that for an hour. Then she stood, walked into the kitchen, and returned with something in her hand. Her phone. I want you to see something, she said. Not because I want forgiveness. Just because I need someone else to know the truth. And you were the only one who ever saw me fully. I ruined that. I know I did. She unlocked her phone and handed it to me. There were hundreds of messages, names I didn't recognize, deleted threads she had recovered. Photos. DMs. Some of it dated years back, even before the fights, before the emotional distance, before the retreat. There was one message that made my stomach lurch. It was to someone named Colby from 4 years ago. The message read, "He's out tonight. Want to come by?" For years. That was during the year we celebrated our 10th anniversary. That was the year I'd written her a letter, bought tickets to that jazz show she loved, and proposed renewing our vows in front of her family. And she was inviting someone else into our bed while I was planning a surprise. I put the phone down. She watched me like a child awaiting punishment. But there was no punishment I could give that would equal the sentence she'd already trapped herself in. "Why are you showing me this now?" I asked. "Because I'm tired of lying," she said. "Because I need to feel pain like the one I caused." "I can't fix you," I said. "I know," she replied. And then she said one more thing, something I didn't expect. "But you can choose what happens next." I stood, walked to the door, and opened it. She stared at me. "You want me to leave?" I looked at her, really looked, and said, "No. I want you to stay one more night. Because tomorrow, I'm going to tell you what I've decided." The morning light was muted and slow. It crept in through the blinds like it was hesitant, like it didn't want to witness whatever conversation was about to unfold. I stood in the kitchen before she even woke up, pouring coffee I didn't intend to drink. My hands were steady, my mind was clear, a kind of clarity I hadn't known in years. Not even when we were at our best. She walked in wearing the same hoodie as the night before, her eyes tired but alert. She didn't ask what I decided. She just sat down at the table and waited, silent, bracing. I took my time before I spoke. "You're not staying," I said. "Not in this house. Not in this chapter. Not like this." Her shoulders sank, but she nodded. She was expecting it, maybe even welcoming it. "But," I continued, "I'm not throwing you out either. I've lived with too much bitterness already. I don't want to be another scar on your story, and I don't want you to be one on mine." She looked up at me. Her lips parted, but she didn't speak. "I'm not going to be the man who spends the next 10 years talking to a therapist about how you ruined me," I said. "You didn't ruin me. You broke me, yes. But breaking is not the end. It's the start of rebuilding." She wiped at her eyes. "I don't know how to be better." "Then start by being honest," I said. "With yourself. With the next person. With whoever this child might be, if it's yours to raise." She swallowed hard. "You think it's his, don't you?" "I think it doesn't matter," I said. "Because the child deserves peace. And I deserve peace. And I'm finally choosing both." I slid a folded piece of paper across the table. She opened it and stared. It was a rental listing, a modest studio apartment across town. I'd called the number that morning. The landlord was kind. "It was available immediately. I covered your first month's rent," I said. "And I booked your first counseling session for Thursday. There's a card inside with the details. It's not a punishment. It's a start." Her face crumpled in disbelief. "Why would you do this for me?" "Because the man you walked away from still exists. And he needed to do this. For himself. Not for you." She cried then. The real kind. The kind that comes when the armor finally collapses. She didn't reach for me, and I didn't cross the room. That was the beauty of it. The boundaries were finally real. Not built out of resentment or pride, but out of self-respect. We packed her things quietly. She folded the blanket on the couch. Milo watched from the hallway again, tail thumping gently, not out of excitement, but as if he sensed the shift, as if even he understood that this wasn't goodbye out of hate. Just goodbye. I walked her to her car. She turned before getting in. "You're a good man, Trent." I nodded. Took me a long time to believe that. But yeah, I think you're right. And then, just like before, she drove away. But this time, I didn't watch her go. I turned back toward the house, my house, and closed the door behind me. Weeks passed. I started painting the bedroom. Got rid of the couch she slept on. Donated old things that carried her scent. Went on walks without checking my phone. Let silence feel like comfort instead of punishment. And then one afternoon, at the same park we used to walk, a woman asked if she could sit on the bench beside me. Her name was Lila. She was reading a book I'd loved in college. We talked. We laughed. No sparks, No declarations, just two people existing in the same quiet space, without history weighing down the moment. It felt good. Not fireworks, not chaos, just good. And in that moment, I realized something important. Freedom isn't what she left to find. Freedom is what I found when I finally let go.